Welcome back to More Than Gardening. It has been a few weeks since I posted here on YouTube. I think by the time this video goes live, it'll be exactly like 4 weeks since my last video, which is the longest break I've taken, like at least this whole gardening season, maybe this year. I've been very proud of how consistent I've been here on YouTube, and I've really liked it, but I have been away for a really good reason. If you missed the announcement over on Instagram or TikTok, I did have my baby. She came 4 weeks early, which was quite the shock for me and Dylan. Things got a little crazy there at the end of my pregnancy. If you do follow me on Instagram and you saw the long post, then you already know. I won't get into like too much detail here on YouTube, but basically I got pre-eclampsia at like 35 and a half-ish weeks pregnant. Had to have her at 36 weeks. If you know what pre-eclampsia is, you know how sucky it is and how quickly things just change and kind of how scary it is. If you've had it before, I totally feel for you. It was the worst. I don't wish it upon anybody, but yeah, that happened at, right around 36 weeks. So that's why she's here with us 4 weeks early. And that's why I've been gone from YouTube for a little bit, just taking a break, getting, in the newborn trenches. Me and Dylan are figuring things out, but things have been going really well. I will link, as always, like my Instagram and TikTok in the description of this video. So if you do want to read like a little bit more of, I don't want to say the birth story, but just like kind of what happened with everything, that is on Instagram in a photo post announcing her. So I'll leave that if you guys care to look at it. We're coming out here today because I really wanted to get this YouTube video live right now in the fall because it's the end of the season, because I'm going to do, which you probably know by the title of this video, a good little lessons learned or everything I learned gardening this year that I'm going to take into next season just to have a better garden. And I want to share those lessons with you guys while they're fresh on my mind right now. And I think that's just like the perfect way to kind of end this gardening season over here on YouTube. Now, that doesn't mean I won't have more YouTube videos this year. I really don't know if I will. We'll see how things go with just having the new baby and everything, but I definitely wanted to get this video out. So without further ado, because I feel like I just blabbed for a long time, let's just get straight into it. I'm gonna go bed by bed, crop by crop, talk about what went well, what didn't go well, what I'm gonna do different next year. And then I'm gonna have my phone out for like some of the time because I have notes in here that I've been taking all season long that I wanted to touch on in this video. And then I also put a question box on my Instagram this morning saying if there's anything specific you guys wanted to know about, this topic, to drop them on Instagram. So I'll be answering those questions too. Overall for the garden, things that I'm doing different next year, the first thing being my timing for planting. If you guys remember, this May was so incredibly cold. It was horribly stressful. It definitely stunted my pepper plants. My tomato plants rebounded just fine, so I won't say those were stunted, but they were affected by the cold early on. My peppers were stunted. All my seeds had to be started later. It was just not a good start to the year. So next year, I'm definitely going to plan on planting a little bit later. That way, if we do have like a sudden cold front the way we did this year, I won't be as affected. However, what I did learn this year, having to go through going through the cold front, was how cold my plants could actually handle. I think the coldest night dipped down to like 39, I want to say. And we did get frost covers. I'll link the ones we used in the description of this video because we ended up covering every bed other than like the broccoli and the onions. Any of the cool weather crops we did not cover, but like the peppers, the tomatoes, everything that was like the tomatillos, any summer crop, we did cover with these frost covers and they worked really well. Yes, I said the peppers were stunted, but I think without the frost covers, they would have been completely destroyed and died. So 2 things, I guess, for next year. I'm going to plant later, closer to Memorial Day, and I guess I have the frost covers. So the thing I would do different if I were you, if you didn't have frost covers, is just get those just in case because they worked wonders. The other thing that this year that I learned that I'm going to do differently is the deer deterrence early on. I had so many issues with deer eating so many tomatoes early on. And they killed my cucumbers, my cantaloupe, and something else. And it just like destroyed me. And then finally about, after like a month of them wreaking havoc, we figured out these motion activated sprinklers. Dylan found these on Amazon, I think. I will link them. These things, we have 4 of them hooked up. We have one here. We have one at that back corner of the garden. We have one that back corner of the garden. And then we have one, you guys can't see it, but over there in the front of the garden. That way, if the deer come from that way, they get warded off. They're off right now, but basically if a deer were to walk through, and I'll insert some footage here of when a deer did try to come up to the garden and then it scared it away, they activate the sprinkler and they scare the deer away. And ever since we implemented these, and I did try so many other things. I tried fish line fence, I tried Repelzol, I tried liquid fence, I tried Irish spring soap, I tried a million different things. These motion activated sprinklers saved my garden. So these will be going up from the start next year, and I highly, highly recommend these if you're dealing with a deer problem as well. Now, moving on to like specific plant related things, this bed is obviously empty right now, but if you remember, this was full of onions. So I have so many onion videos on my channel at this point that I'm not gonna get too in depth with the onions, because I think my last one that I posted, I explained my entire growing process and kind of what I'm gonna do different next year already. But high level for the onions, the one thing I'm gonna do different is set up windscreens earlier on. When I planted these in April, like the 3 or 4 days right after planting them, the wind came like crazy, and it came, 99% of it came from this direction, which is the west. Yeah, 99% came from the west over here, and totally flattened my onions out. And what we ended up doing is we set up a T-post here where I'm standing, and then we set up one right here, and then we just used this, like, Dylan, was it like saran wrap?
Yeah.
It was like automotive grade saran wrap or whatever. And we wrapped it between the two T-posts just to build a wall from the wind. And then we did the same thing on that bed over there. That one has carrots right now, but that had red onions at the time. And we did the same thing there. And once we implemented that, the onions like rebounded quickly and they did so good. I had a much better onion year this year than last year. So next year, I'm just gonna set up that windscreen earlier. And then this year I had them only on the west side of the beds because that's where the wind 99% of the time was coming from. However, there were a couple days here and there where it came from the east, and I wish they were a little protected that side too. So I think next year I'll put up a windscreen over there. That was a game changer in saving my onions from the wind. This bed here, like I said, was onions. Now it's carrots. I don't have a whole lot to comment on about what I'm gonna do different for carrots next year. I did harvest that back bed of carrots yesterday, and the harvest was like decent. I'll insert a photo here of what I got. I don't know if there's not much I would do differently other than maybe fertilize a little bit more or water a little bit more. This bed, I don't know how they're doing yet because they don't need to be pulled for probably another 3 or 4 weeks. So not much to comment on the carrots. I did get great germination this year, better than last year. And I don't know, I can't think if I did anything different this year or last year other than maybe a little bit denser of seeds and maybe a little bit more watering, but yeah, not too much to comment on for the carrots. I think they're gonna do like decent this year. In this empty bed, this was my broccoli. The biggest thing different I'm gonna do next year for the broccoli is grow way more of it. I think I had like 6 plants in this bed and then 6 plants in that back bed over there, and I just did like a spring crop. I'm going to do way more. I think I'm gonna do probably those 2 beds plus one of these 8x4 beds, or I'll move all the broccoli in here. I haven't decided my whole setup for next year yet, but I'm definitely growing more broccoli, and I'm gonna get some insect netting for them earlier on because towards the end of the broccoli's life, the cabbage moths started coming through and the worms came and like totally started destroying them. I got lucky that they didn't come until like right after I harvested them, but I think that was just because the weather was so weird this year. I don't think I'm gonna get as lucky next year, so I am gonna get some netting to just drape over them. That way I don't have to deal with those cabbage worms. And also the kale that was planted with the broccoli, those got totally eaten by the cabbage worms because they were still in those beds after I harvested the broccoli and were affected by them. So definitely need to do something next year so I don't lose all of my kale to those nasty, nasty worms. This trellis here was supposed to be cantaloupe. I had my 2nd year in a row failing at cantaloupe, and the 2nd year in a row the issue was deer. Last year the deer killed my cantaloupe right before harvest. It's like the one time the deer found my garden last year. This year they found my garden early on and destroyed all of my seedlings that were growing on this side and this side. So by the time I replanted and the cantaloupe started growing, like it was just too late. I didn't have enough time in the season to get the cantaloupe to grow. Also, I had a lot of issues with, because I started them from seed, direct sowing. The roly-polies this year were out of control. That was a common theme with almost all of the seeds that I direct sowed, which I didn't have as much of an issue with last year. I think it's because it was so cold and wet. You just have more roly-polies. So I'm going to use Sluggo earlier on, and I'm still going to direct sow seeds next year, but I'm going to have some backup seedlings just in case those don't take. I did that this year. I had backups, but I started them way late, like after they already destroyed, where next year I will direct sow, but have some backup seedlings inside just in case these ones don't take or don't do well, or the roly-polies get to them again. But I will also be laying Sluggo down way earlier, because it seemed like once I did that this year, my roly-poly problem went away. And I usually don't like using like any, I guess, like chemicals or sprays or bug anything in the garden, but the Sluggo is totally worth it. And I will be using that again next year. I will link in the description the one that I used and had a lot of success with. This is one of 2 spots of peppers, but this is like the main pepper bed. The peppers made me really disappointed this year, because last year it was so good, and this year it was a slow start. The biggest problem was it being so cold in May. Like I said in the beginning of this video, it just totally stunted their growth. So next year, 2 things with the peppers. One, I'm gonna start my seeds inside earlier. I started them about 3 or 4 weeks later this year compared to last year, because last year I felt like they were way too early, where next year I'm gonna meet in the middle a little bit and just start kind of in between. I'll split the difference. And then I'm gonna plant them in the garden much later. I'm gonna plant them once I know for absolute sure that we will not have any nights in the 40s, because it absolutely, even with the frost covers, these peppers got so stunted that we got a decent yield from them, but the yield came so late that we only got like a few good harvests, where if they were to be like in better shape, started earlier, not stunted, we would have had over a month of good harvest. So definitely didn't get as much from these plants, but I don't know, we'll do better next year. This trellis had cucumbers on it. The deer really destroyed them. That was like the biggest issue with them and why we didn't get so many this year. So nothing really I'm going to do different in terms of like growing strategies, other than the motion activated sprinklers will be set up earlier next year. And then hopefully we'll just have a better cucumber year, because we won't have the deer destroy the plants, you know, a few weeks into their life. This bed here, oh my gosh, I have so many negative thoughts about it. Most hated bed. I hate this bed. I don't even want to talk about it. I will not be growing tomatillos next year. You can see how many are on this plant. I stopped harvesting them because they just made me so angry. I totally screwed up planting way too many in this bed. I think I did 10 in here, 2 rows of 5. I ended up pulling a few here and there just to make room for airflow. I had jalapeno and banana peppers here and along like the side over there that just never really did anything for me, which was such a shame. Those were like my favorite peppers to grow. I'm still really sad about it, but they literally just got shaded out. Like these tomatillos got so big and so crazy that the pepper plants along here barely got any sun. They would get like morning sun, and then that was it. So they didn't do much. So not only did I have these obnoxious, annoying tomatillo plants, but then they also compromised my favorite pepper plants. So I'm not growing tomatillos again. And then the banana peppers and the jalapenos, I'm giving them prime real estate in my garden next year. I'm not having another year in a row where I don't get good yields from them, because that was really disappointing. I love my pickled peppers, and next year I'm gonna grow so many of them that it makes up for this year basically having nothing. And yeah, tomatillos, no more. I'm sick of them. They're insane. I hate them. This trellis, what was this one? This was green beans. This side of the trellis of green beans barely grew because of the tomatillos, blocking them out, shading them out. I think one just fell, whatever. So I didn't get much from the pole beans here, thanks to the tomatillos. This side, the pole beans, I don't know what the issue was here. Oh no, I did get good harvest here, but I only had a couple of plants here. And then you need like a ton of pole beans or green beans to get a good harvest. Like this green beans aren't a plant where you can have like a 1 or 2. You need a ton of them. So the fact that only like one side of my trellis growing and doing well with them just wasn't enough. So next year, planting more pole beans, and they won't get shaded out by giant tomatillos, and we'll have a better year. This bed here, this whole gap was bush beans. So green beans again, but bush style. And then I've got a couple pepper plants over there. I've got some Thai chilies and cayennes. I'll just quickly touch on those. The same thing for those pepper plants as the ones before, where they just got stunted by that cold weather. And I started my seeds a little late. So seeds will be starting earlier next year, and the plants will be planted later next year to avoid any sort of cold weather stunting. And oh, also, this past December or January, I posted a video about my garden plan for this year. And in it, I linked a garden planner that I create and I use every year that says all of the seeds I'm growing, all the plants I'm growing, when I start my seeds, when I plant them outside, basically like an overview of my plan. I will be making a new one for next season. It'll probably be out probably around this December, January. So that will have all of the information. So like as I'm going through here and I'm saying, I'll start the peppers earlier, I'll start this late, like later or whatever, all that exact timing will be in my planner that I'll create for next year. So I will link the one I had last year in the description of this video just so you can see it, but I'll have an updated one for you guys in the next few months or so. But anyways, this bed was with all of the bush beans. The one thing I will say about bush beans is I'm planting way more next year, way denser, because they were kind of falling over and I think they just need to be denser to like hold each other up. And then I did 2 varieties this year, Maxabel and Contender, and the Contender yielded way more. They tasted better and the plants were like much more sturdy, where the Maxabels were like kind of all falling over. So I'm not going to do Maxabels next year. I'm just going to do Contenders. I'm going to grow way more of them. And the other thing about bush beans, I didn't like how they only produced for like a couple of weeks and then they died and I had to remove them and I had a gap in my garden. So I'm probably going to wait to plant them until after one of my spring crops. Like when I pull my broccoli, then I'll probably plant green beans and just have a later harvest of them, because I didn't like how all the room they took up in this bed, and then once they were done and I had a gap. I'd rather plant them later after a spring crop and then never have a gap in my garden. So just got to like optimize things a little bit that way. This trellis here, which was one of the main things I was looking forward to this whole season, was great. And then it wasn't. And then it was like, okay, it looks crazy right now. We just harvested the squash, pretty much everything. I've got this one loofah hanging here. I don't know what to do with it. I got a question on Instagram about how many loofahs I ended up getting. This is it. This is my one loofah. I will not be growing loofah again. I hate to be that person that like tries something, fails, and then doesn't do it again, because I usually will like keep going, but it just wasn't like, it's just not worth it to me. Loofah takes forever to grow and it takes up so much space. Like these vines got so crazy that I just don't think it's worth it. And especially being in a zone like this where I don't have a long growing season, I just don't think it's worth it. So no more loofah for me. But along this trellis, we had pumpkins. We just harvested them yesterday. I'll insert a picture. They're so cute. They're the sweet sugar pie ones. I can't wait to use them to make like pies and cookies this fall. They're going to be amazing. And then we had acorn squash and butternut squash. Key takeaways there is I'm going to do less pumpkins next year, just because like I don't need that many pumpkins. And they're so susceptible to squash vine borer that it was such a pain in the butt dealing with it. I'm just going to do less pumpkins. I'm going to do way more butternut squash. I feel like the butternut squash really wasn't affected by the vine borer the same way the pumpkins and the acorn squash were. And the butternuts were pretty prolific. So I'm going to do way more butternuts. And then acorn squash, I'll probably do like the same amount. And then also, what did I have on here? Oh, I had Japanese cucumbers on here. Probably not going to grow those again, just because, I don't know. I only got a few of them. Like, I like the pickling cucumbers the best because I make pickles out of them. And then I like the Market More ones because they're good for sandwiches and salads. And then the Japanese cucumbers, I was kind of like, what are we doing? I don't know what to do with them. So probably not going to grow those next year. And then one more thing, so I just looked at my notes and Dylan reminded me to touch on this. The squash vine borer, like I was saying, the pumpkins were so susceptible to it and the butternut squash weren't. I will say what I think worked with the squash vine borer for the pumpkins was injecting the BT into them, and then, which I'll link in the description, and then also just, I think people in the gardening world call it surgery, but basically extracting the actual vine borer from the stem of the plant. It's annoying and it's hard to do and it's kind of gross, but I was going in there with like scissors and just like cutting like a vertical line down the stem at the base about an inch or two above the ground, and then opening it up, and then I was finding like the little larvae that burrow into your plant and kill them, and I was pulling them out, and that seemed to work, like that plus the BT. But next year what I'm going to do specifically with like the pumpkins and the acorn squash where they're more susceptible to it is I'm going to plant them on the outside of this trellis. So like this year, this whole, like all of these plants were pumpkins and then all of these were acorn squash, and doing all that maintenance on them, like right here and right here, was really difficult because at one point these had huge leaves coming at me and I couldn't really get to them, where next year I'm going to just do probably like 2 pumpkin plants, one on this end and then one over there on this end. That way I can access it from like here and then right here to actually work on the plant to like protect it against the vine borer. And then the acorn squash, because they're susceptible too, I'll just plant probably like a couple of plants on the very end here and the very end over there. That way I can reach them. And then throughout the middle, I'll do my butternut squash because they don't need as much help from the squash vine borer, so I won't be like digging around in the plants to take care of them. But yeah, other than that, I think this trellis, other than that, was a success. It was honestly beautiful. It brought so much like life and like fun to this garden, and this is something that I'm so glad we set this up. It was kind of a lot of work. I will link a video to like when we did put it up, but completely worth it. If you aren't growing vertically on trellises, let this be your sign to start. Next year, put it on your garden plan. This bed in here, this was bush beans, so green beans, which I already touched on, and then all of these zinnias that look like literal zombies. They look crazy right now. They were beautiful. If you saw on any of my garden tours, I loved this part of the garden. The only thing I'm really gonna do different with the zinnias next year is they're not gonna be in this bed. I'm gonna put them up in the shed bed, which we'll show you at the end of the video. I'm gonna put them there just because that shed bed over there is like the first thing you see when you walk out to the garden. And it's the first thing you see if you're like passing our house by boat from the water over here. And I think it would just be so much prettier if it had the zinnias there. And then it would open this bed up to what I think I'm gonna do is probably peppers here, just because this bed gets so much sun and the peppers need sun. I think this would be like a good spot for them. And then this here, this is some sort of lavender. I'll put the exact variety in the description. I'm not gonna grow it again. It's cool looking and it's pretty, but I've got no use for it. And most of my garden is very like functional, other than the zinnias. Well, the zinnias are functional. They bring in pollinators, but I don't know why I grew this. There's nothing, I've got nothing to do with it. So won't be growing that again. This bed was my San Marzanos. Looks insane. All the tomatoes right now look so crazy. They're so diseased. They need to go. We're gonna do the garden cleanup within the next few days, I think. So all of this will be taken down, which with that, 'cause I probably won't film it, just a tip for you guys, if you're taking down your garden, specifically tomatoes, because they get so diseased, and this goes for any plant that gets diseased, but mainly tomatoes, do not compost this stuff. All of this blight and septoria leaf spot and all of this disease you do not want in your compost pile, because if your compost pile doesn't heat up to the appropriate temperature and doesn't totally decompose by the time you use it next year, you're just introducing disease back into your garden. So what I do is when I take down my tomato plants, I just throw them in the fire pit and then we just burn it all. But overall, the San Marzanos this year, the only thing I'm gonna change for next year, which I've already talked about, is putting the deer repellents up, or the deer sprinklers up earlier, because these plants did super, super well this year after the deer took hundreds of tomatoes from me. They really were productive. I mean, there's still some on here now. They're really tiny because that's just the way it is at the end of the season. They're never gonna be big, but this worked out really well. This is an 8x4 bed. It has 10 San Marzano plants in it, 5 in each row. We've got 10-foot T-post. We've got the Florida weave as the trellis. And overall, this bed just did really well. The only other thing I would change in this bed, just because I'm looking at them right now, is these are French marigolds down here, and these are my favorite types of marigolds to grow. And I didn't grow that many this year. I experimented with some other flowers. I experimented with some like African white marigolds, or the Kilimanjaro variety, and then I did calendula. And I wish I didn't. I wish I would have just done the French marigolds, because these ones are so much prettier. They bloom longer, they get bushier, just everything about them. I love them so much more than the other flowers I grew this year. So next year I'm gonna be growing only French marigolds again. That's what I did my first couple years gardening. And that was like one thing I really regretted this season, was I didn't have a lot of the French marigolds in my garden. So next year there will be a lot more of those. Our peach trees over here, which we showed in a couple tours, really aren't doing well. And then also just because we're passing it. This is one of the other sprinklers that I was saying in the beginning of the video. So we've got this whole area like protected. However, what's not doing is protecting our peach trees, because you guys are doing terrible. The deer just keep coming to the back of this yard and they eat all the leaves. I also have no idea what to do with them for this winter. I have so much homework to do to figure out like how to overwinter them. I feel very, very unprepared, ignorant, kind of silly that I don't know what to do. So if you've got any advice on just like what I should do with these plants this winter, please let me know. I know we need to put something around them to protect them from the deer. I don't know what. I also don't know, do I need to like prune them a little bit? I feel this is not my expertise clearly. So if you know anything about peach trees and how to overwinter them, please let me know in the comments, because I would love to not lose these trees completely and have a better year next year. This tomato bed here was all my slicers, my beefsteaks and Cherokee purples. Kind of like the San Marzanos, not much I would do differently. I felt like the plant spacing was really good. I had 2 rows of 4, so 8 plants total. The Florida weave did really good. The placement in the garden was great. My fertilizing schedule was good. Everything went well except the deer eating them early on, so not really going to change much about them. However, this bed, this is one of the calendulas I was just talking about with the marigolds, where this is a French marigold, my favorite flower to have in these beds. They do great for pest control and they're just so beautiful. This just turned so ugly. These were like really hard to deadhead. Bugs ate them to death. I really hated these, so no more of these. My basil that I had in this bed and a couple other beds wasn't the best this year. I will say herbs overall were not a priority for me this season, and it was so clear in my harvest and just everything. I don't know if it's just because I had such a bigger garden this year than last year. I just didn't have the time to do everything that I was trying to do, and some things just didn't get done, like harvesting herbs. And if you don't harvest your herbs frequently, your plants don't grow. So I barely ever harvested them, and then I just harvested them a few weeks ago and barely got any because the plants never got big, because you have to harvest to get a big plant. So I just really didn't do well with my herbs last year. So next year, one thing I'm gonna do different is I'm just gonna harvest my herbs more frequently to get bigger, bushier plants, more productivity out of them, and just have a better herb year overall, because I am sad now, this is the end of the season, I don't have much to show for the herbs. These next few beds are all of the Roma tomato beds. So this one, that one, and then that third one. Again, great tomato year. There's not much I would change other than the deer. I mean, we harvested these yesterday. We did have our first frost last night. I probably should have said that in the beginning of this video. It got down to, I don't know, 30 something. There was frost on the ground, frost on our rug down by the lake. So yeah, this garden is definitely done. So I'm glad that we harvested yesterday, but we have been harvesting nonstop. These Romas have been doing so good. My favorite thing about these Roma tomato beds, which I will do next year and every other year, is these tomato cages. I cannot say enough how much I love these. I will link them in the description with a discount code. They are amazing. They keep your plants so tidy, and they just keep them from falling over, and they space things out really well, and they don't restrict them the way some of those like cone-shaped tomato cages do. These really, really were such a success for me this year, and I think I'm going to get more of these for next year to actually use for some of my bigger pepper plants, like my bell peppers and my poblanos, just because those peppers get so big and heavy and the plants kind of start to fall a little bit. I think these would work really well for them, so I'm going to pick more of these up. But other than that, the only other thing I will say overall with the tomatoes that I'll be doing different next year is starting the seeds a little later. I think I started them like 3 weeks or 4 weeks earlier this year compared to last year, and it just wasn't necessary. They got way too big inside, and that was part of the reason I planted them when I did, which was kind of a little too early, like looking back in hindsight. So next year I will be planting my tomatoes probably about 3 weeks, or starting my tomato seeds, I should say, about 3 weeks later than I did this year. I do want to touch briefly on the honeybees, because there were some questions on Instagram about like how did beekeeping go, what's going on with the bees, etc. And I mentioned this in a few of my tours, but I think we're done beekeeping, at least for a little bit. It did not go good this year, just like last year. We failed again this year. I'm kind of at the point where like I don't know exactly what we're doing wrong, and it's like we just don't have time to like pour in a ton of effort to like learn exactly how to be better beekeepers at this point. I mean, I'm to the point where I'm like gotta play to my strengths, which is the garden. I feel like I know what I'm doing here. I really enjoy it. It's going well. I'm going to keep doing it. I think Dylan, on the other hand, he probably wants to have another go at the bees. So I'm not going to totally take them out of the equation for next year, but they're not a guarantee. I don't know. We did this year. We tried something different. The fact that we got a package of bees, where last year we got the nuke, still failed. We don't even know what happened this year because we never saw a swarm, and then they were randomly like gone and kind of died. So I don't know. We'll see if beekeeping is in our future. But yeah, that's where the bees are at. Other than that, the rest of the garden, I think we just have that shed bed up there, which we didn't touch on yet. That had all my zucchini in it this year and sunflowers. I will say next year I'm going to put all zinnias in there just to have like a really, really pretty bed of flowers. I don't think I'm going to do sunflowers next year just because I feel like they don't bloom for very long. Like, a couple weeks maybe, and then they just look like dead, and I really didn't like how they look. So unless you guys know of like a sunflower variety that blooms for a really long time, let me know in the comments. But the ones I've grown the last couple of years, I'm just not super impressed with. So I don't think I'm going to be doing sunflowers again. And then the zucchini that were in here, I think I did 4 or 5 plants this year, same thing last year. I'm only going to do probably 2 zucchini plants next year just because they produce so much. We don't need 5 zucchini plants, like 1 or 2 is fine. And I'm going to move the zucchini into like the main part of the garden and just find some space there for 1 or 2 plants. The raspberry bushes, which are all the way down there, very similar to the peach trees in that they just keep getting totally wrecked by the deer. And I just haven't figured out, I don't know like what the solve is there. The motion activated sprinklers need to be hooked up to a hose to work. You guys can probably see this hose kind of running here, and then from that sprinkler there's a hose off the back end because they're all kind of connected by hose. If we wanted to set up sprinklers by the raspberry bushes, we would have to, I don't even know, like our one hose spigot from the backyard is used for this. I don't even know how we would get a hose over there. So I need to figure out for next year like a good deer repellent for those. Also for this winter, similar to the peach trees, I don't really know what to do yet. If you know about raspberry bushes, have grown raspberry bushes, and you have advice on just like how to protect them this winter, definitely let me know in the comments. I'll be doing a ton of research myself over the next, week or so because we really got to get this figured out. But I can't offer much advice there because I don't know. My one thing, or I guess like lessons learned for the raspberry bushes for next year is gotta protect them from the deer because, oh my gosh, we didn't get a single raspberry this year because they got eaten to bits and they're still getting eaten to bits. Like the other day we came out here and looked at them and they were destroyed again. So I don't know what to do with the raspberry bushes. One other thing I keep seeing on Instagram in the question box that I put up that's like a common question is composting and like how I'm setting my beds up this like right now for a successful season next year. And all I'm doing, and people are also requesting like to go through my garden like takedown process, which I don't know if I'm going to film that or not yet, but all I do when I take down the garden is I just compost all of the plants that are healthy. So like I said with the tomato plants, those all have like blight and disease, those get burned. Anything that's healthy like the pepper plants and some herbs and things like that, those will go into my compost pile. And then all of the beds for like to put them to like sleep for the year, I just add a layer of mature compost to all of the beds. So we've got 2 compost bins over here that we made last year. One side is kind of like our mature pile, so we probably stopped adding to it like a few months ago, and it's just like really turning into that rich soily compost. And then the other side is like what we've been adding to. So the other side is what I'll put like all my plants from this season in to decompose over the winter, and I'll probably use that like next year in the spring. And the mature pile I'll be using to top off all of my beds like right now when I take them down. That way there's nice nutrients in there for next spring. But other than that, that's all I do. I don't do a cover crop. I know a lot of people do cover crops. I just haven't in the past and haven't really found a need to, so I won't be doing that next year. But other than that, I think that's it. It's a pretty simple process. All the trellises will stay up, the T-posts will stay up, the cages will be put away in the shed, and that's any stakes that are throughout the garden. I've got a few stakes holding some pepper plants. Those will all be put away, but other than that, that's kind of it for the garden. So that is an overview of kind of like what I learned this year, what I'll be doing next year. I hope this video was helpful for you if you're like a newer gardener looking for things to kind of tweak in your own gardening routine, or if you're seasoned and you're just, I don't know, looking for a couple of things to do differently next year. I hope you liked this video. If you did like it, please leave a like. Make sure to subscribe to my channel to see more gardening content. I know this season gardening's kind of like over-ish, but I'll probably have more videos coming out soon. For canning, I have a ton to can still, just because like all the tomatoes we've been getting over the last month are now in the freezer because with the baby coming so early, I haven't been able to do as much canning. So probably more canning content coming up soon. Definitely later this winter, I'll have a video on all my plans for next year, and I'll have an updated garden planner for you guys if you want to pick that up to help plan your garden for next year. And then the next real thing for gardening will be January, which seems far away right now because it's actually not that far away. We're in October, so it's in a few months. January, I'll be starting my onion seed. So definitely make sure to subscribe if you want to see more content. Follow me on Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook. If you have any other questions, please leave them in the comment section and I'll do my best to answer them. And thank you so much for watching this video, and thank you so much for taking along this entire season. This has been such a fun gardening season. It's been so fun uploading to YouTube pretty much every week except for the last 4 weeks, and I've just enjoyed it so much. So thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next one.